Coming up in 1 minute on the Jackin Around podcast.
Explain the process of music-friendly cities. Like, what is it? How'd that get going?
What this program can do is get involved with an artist and identify talent before it pops and say, what can we do to make it easier for you? Can we create citywide listening platforms that will turn people on to you? Can we create billboards? And when they do become successful, the city can at least say, well, we saw him back when, and we pointed it out. You know,
Yeah.
and he or she has done great things, and they've always been a great ambassador for this city. But we got involved with them early,
Right.
and Fort Worth has done that by creating gas cards to get people, on the road. I mean,
No
just,
kidding.
just really, that's impactful stuff.
That's big time.
It is.
Explain that. What they just
So,
give them a credit card, or
but looking back, I have to give Pat a ton of respect for this. And share, with you and anyone who asks how grateful I am that he took this attitude with me, that when I left, it was like, for me and Pat, it was like a marriage breaking up and all that goes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, I want to thank you for that, because that whole line of people I met when I was finishing high school for 6 months was direct result of me gang staging your show at Stafford.
Hey, man.
This is the Jackin Around podcast, hosted by two-time Academy of Country Music Award winner Jack Ingram. And now, here's Jack.
The Jackin Around podcast is brought to you by Lone Star Dry Goods, a collection of handcrafted quality goods with a truly unique Americana vibe. Visit the world headquarters in the heart of downtown Abilene, Texas, and Willow Park, Texas, in Fort Worth. Visit LoneStarDryGoods.com for more information. Welcome to the Jackin Around podcast, available on your favorite audio platforms and in video on YouTube. For links and info, visit JackinAroundPodcast.com. Music-friendly cities. Like, what is it? How'd that get going?
So here's the highlighted problem that I had when I pulled out my highlighter when I came in 15. I sat in my office next to the Capitol in downtown Austin, and I started looking at my phone, and I couldn't call anybody in any other city who could tell me what was going on in these other cities. I couldn't call. I could call 10 people I knew from my playing days there,
Right,
and say what's happening, who's doing what, but there was no office for me to communicate with. And so immediately I saw a problem there. To be a statewide agency, we need satellites that do work similar to ours in communities large and small around the state and report to us about what those things are. So through that was born the Music Friendly Communities program. And it really was a sales job for a couple of years, at least 2 years, where I was going to convention and visitors
I remember
bureaus.
talking to you that time.
Yeah, it was
busy.
It was a lot, man. It was a lot of me in my car going to meet with mayor's offices, city councils, convention and visitors bureaus around the state to talk them into creating offices within city government that reported to us.
So you were working with the cities,
Yeah, because
not with venues.
No, because I think it's important for cities to get involved the way Austin's gotten involved and other industry centers. I think Texas is one big industry center.
Right.
I don't think we're Dallas and Houston. I think we're all one big thing, but I don't think real progress comes unless they're working hard locally to make us that industry center. So creating this program asked a lot of them. And I was asking cities and not just private folks with money who might lose interest.
Right.
So we created a template for this and an infrastructure. And we said, you've got to create an office within city government, a person that runs that office, an advisory board to work with that person. And you've got to create a database that mirrors ours.
So basically, you were going to Houston, Dallas.
I'm cloning my office in all these
cloning,
places.
just trying to clone what you got going.
Yeah, now we have 26.
And are they called, Texas Music Office of Texas Music Houston?
No, I think it's important that they own them. They have a logo that they use that's ours, and it's got their name around it, so we keep that going there. But I mean, the Lindale Music Office does amazing things, but it's very different than the El Paso Music Office that does very different things there. They're very different places.
And do they hire somebody who?
They either hire someone or look around their office and say, well, you're doing this job now. But they're on staff either through the city government or a city contracted agency like a CVB.
How'd you convince the cities to pay for that?
Essentially, I told them it was a good idea and it'd be a really good look.
Yeah.
And then 1,000 follow-up conversations to prove why. And they asked how much money I was going to give them. And I said, absolutely no money. I said, you're going to do this.
That's a tough sell, dude.
There's no tougher sell than going into a group that has no idea what you're talking about
Right.
and asking them to create a layer of bureaucracy that they don't want to create with no funding available from your end. But now we have 26. It can be done. We're going to sign.
What's the goal?
Well, the goal is engaged partners. If we had 10 engaged partners who were doing great work, I'd be completely happy with that. I whiteboarded it out and said, I don't think we've got a fully fleshed out program until we have the majors. But major cities' levers of power are huge and hard to pull. And so Dallas will be signed up this year, and then Houston will be signed up this year. And then I'll say we've got a fully fleshed out program.
So you'll get Dallas and Houston this year.
Then I think we'll be done with our majors.
What other big cities? You have
every other one.
Fort Worth and
Fort Worth
San
was our
Antonio.
first, actually.
Hey, it just came out today that the PBR is leaving Vegas for Fort Worth.
Yeah, the PBR. It's moving. Yeah, it's moving.
You're kidding.
So, that's a big deal. So Fort Worth has been like our A+ kind of student. They internalized this fast. Mayor Betsy Price, when she was there, and now Mayor Parker, who's been recently elected, they got it immediately. And they said, well, we can add this onto our portfolio, and we have money through our visit bureau to go actually make it a real program. And they were in the process of building Here Fort Worth, which is a nonprofit to support it. So I went and hammered them hard. They created a fantastic program that has become, along with Austin, sort of a template for how you do this. So all of these cities, 26, like I said now, have built these programs. What's better than them talking to me, though, about what I think they ought to do with it, is them talking to each other about how they're doing it.
Now, does this benefit, does this office, let's take Fort Worth, for example. Is it more about venue support or individual artist support?
It starts nominally. It starts with getting a full understanding of what their industry is at home. Mm-hmm. That's venues. That's people who work in offices that support the industry. That's performers. That's booking agents, managers. They've got to understand.
Is it music stores?
100%.
Yeah.
It's people who contribute to the music industry at
Right.
home. Then they build out a program that suits the needs of those people once they listen to them for the first time. So the programs look different because every town's made up of different people like that, and different people are more willing to get engaged in different places. So it benefits everybody.
It'd be a hell of a job for a young politician or for
you can make a mark in a place that's really fresh and new.
Well, you're making up being creative about what programs you're trying to set up.
I align it with what I've done in my office by essentially saying, expectations for this are relatively low. Let's be honest. You could run this office the way it's always been run, and no one would really think anything of it. If you did, that's fine. Congrats. Or you can really put your stamp on it and
Make it into something.
Turn it into something, and people would know that you did that, or you and your staff and your team did that. So yeah, for anyone who takes over a program that is semi-bureaucratic in nature and can really put a stamp on it, that's kind of a rare thing. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a great starting point to someone who maybe has a passion for music, but wants to be involved in the running of a city too.
Right.
And informing city policy. And that's a really cool position.
So I'm guessing, like, as far as individual musicians, this office benefits them more by supporting the infrastructure, the Sims, the Ham, all the things that you guys really work hands-on with, and the impact maybe not be noticed by the musicians.
It could be. In different places, they've adopted different strategies that shine more of a light on individuals. Mm-hmm. So I'll go back to Fort Worth. They're just a great example. Let me make a broader point real quick, then I'll go back to that. We have a tendency to throw parades for people once they become successful. And we're very, very apt to jump on board a bandwagon that's been built.
Right.
When someone becomes eminently, successful, we love to claim them and say, look what we did.
Right.
We produced Gary Clark Jr. or
right.
We produced Leon Bridges in Fort Worth. What this program can do is get involved with an artist much, much earlier than that and identify talent before it pops and say, what can we do to make it easier for you? What policies would make it easier for you? Can we create citywide listening platforms that will turn people on to you? Can we create billboards that will say, you don't know him yet, but he's coming up. We love him. He supports Fort Worth. He takes Fort Worth out on the road for us. And when they do become successful, the city can at least say, well, we saw him back when, and we pointed it out,
Yeah.
and he or she has done great things, and they've always been a great ambassador for this city. But we got involved with them early.
Right.
And Fort Worth has done that by creating gas cards to get people, on the road. I mean,
No kidding.
Just really, that's impactful stuff.
That's big time.
It is.
Explain that. What they just
So
give them a credit card or?
yeah, they would give them a gas card and say, if you're going on the road and you're leaving from Fort Worth, all we ask is that you go promote our city when you're on stages and other places, but we'll help pay for gas while you're on tour. And we know that any little margin helps. Typically you
brilliant.
come back in the red from a run, and you have to go do it because you're creating these concentric touring circles. But
Right.
a little help from the city, you're forever grateful for that.
Absolutely.
And that pays dividends way down the line for city.
Now, would that be? Let's talk about genres then. Like, if the city's offering that and they want you to be a good ambassador for the city, but you're in a punk band and your mentality is not to be anyone's spokesman,
Yeah.
but they can get involved with that program. And is there do they have to do anything? Are the artists?
I think the best calling for an artist like that or any other is to get involved in the conversation.
Yeah.
If their material that they're taking out is maybe not going to be, widely accepted because it's got speech that's not great or something like
Right.
that, there's a case-by-case discussion to be had there. Fine.
Right.
But if those people are involved, if they show up to these advisory board meetings or these commission meetings that happen all the time now, they at least got their voice heard.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, I mean, they may not like what they hear back, but they've had a chance to share what they think.
Yeah, and at least then they can make a decision on, just like any grown up has.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to support that. They're not listening to me.
Right.
But, the simple act of going to voice your opinion to someone who's listening to you is a huge step from, well, no one cares about me. I'm just playing music. So I'm,
Right.
I'm nobody in this town.
Right.
Which is not, it shouldn't be true.
What I found about what you're talking about building in city by city is people have asked me what's the difference between living in Dallas or Austin or Nashville. And it has more to do with, if you say in Austin, I'm a musician, that's a job.
That's right.
There's pride to be taken in that. People understand what it is. You can go to a bank and get a loan. Whereas in all those other cities, if you're a musician, it's...
They're like, prove that you have a business.
Yeah.
Part of our mission statement for Music Friendly Community highlights that. We say we want the music industry to be understood and respected as a valued profession in this city. So if you're a part of that organization, you're given that respect or understanding, and you're given that platform to contribute. So yeah, that's the thing. In a lot of these cities, it was great once you got successful and you came back. They're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess he's one in a million and he made it or whatever.
Right.
The idea that these people go to studios every day and create, run studios, write songs, they should be valued no differently than anyone else who does a job and provides for themselves and their families. And why hasn't it always been that way? I mean,
Right.
that's something we're seeking to sort of overcome with this program.
Understanding that each ant is carrying a heavy load.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly
No matter
right.
what.
It says so in our mission statement. We seek through this program to make the music industry, a valued and respected, profession in this community. So,
Well, it seems like you're doing a good job, man.
I
Do you
appreciate
really enjoy it?
yeah, I do. I think there's a part of me that is service oriented, that finds satisfaction in that. And while it's really frustrating at times, and working in bureaucracy is what it is all the time. And
Is that like an uphill? Is that like hills are hard no matter what? Is it always that way?
it is always that way, but it's an understood scenario
part of the
to me
job.
now. And so I just brush that aside. I don't think they're trying to make it any harder than it should be. It can only work one way to stay ethically and financially responsible to do the things we're doing. So I
Right.
accept it. But myself personally, I've learned now, after having done this for 6 years, I've learned that I take a great deal of satisfaction in creating things that could possibly help engage people who you want to take advantage of them.
So when do you start? Because 6 years in,
It's a piece of time.
That's a good chunk of time.
Sure.
First of all, do you want to go onward in politics?
No, I don't think so. There's not a particular calling to me to work, quote unquote, work in politics. I think.
But you seem to be such a natural, man.
I think I'm more natural now in working to create relationships that could ultimately help people. And so I think that could look a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my higher callings is going to be, this is through self-inventory and kind of reflection. I think part of my, if I look back on the adult part of my life when I went to work, and I could say I ultimately worked in things or around things or for things that helped other people. Like, I want to make money. I want to support my family. I want to do well, of course. I want to be successful. But if I could do that by supporting things that supported other people and creating more opportunities for folks, that would be optimizing me.
So is it worth it to like, that sounds like you want to be in like nonprofit world.
I mean, if the right nonprofit came along that offered me a chance to do a similar growth trajectory that I did at TMO, 100%. I mean, yeah, absolutely. If a company that did good work for people asked me to come, consult or work on it, fantastic. I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Right.
But I do know that the more thought I've given it, having a more purpose-driven professional life is going to be something that makes me happy when I'm older and looking back.
Now, when you said that when you started working in your adult life, I'm assuming that's after you stopped playing fiddle on the road.
Yeah. I mean, look,
is that when you became an adult?
I don't know. I think part of the, this is what I talk to a lot of younger people about now, because given my age, I get to do that some. The period of time between, so I played with Pat. That was my main act from 96 to 2010. That's about 15 years.
Wow.
So that period of time between 2010 and 15, where I started doing this work at TMO, I was really trying to find out, how I stepped away from being solely known as a musician, touring recording musician. Not that there's anything wrong with that or any stigma attached to it, but it was very much a part of my identity,
right.
How I viewed myself and how others viewed me. So that 5 years, sort of, however you want to call it, that period in between was very much sort of just a transition period to try to figure out, full stop, I'm not doing that anymore. What does the next adult part look like?
So you made a decision, I got to get off the bus.
Yeah, 100%. And that was leading up to 2010. In 2010, when the opportunity came to bring half the money in to start that company and really put my head down and go to work, and it was not sexy work, I was really going to work my way out of being that person.
How hard was that?
Really hard.
Yeah. Mentally was like, it's almost like leaving the.
It was depressing. It was scary. It was very much like starting a new career. In fact, people laugh occasionally, especially people I played with, when I say I retired from touring in 2010. I didn't retire and go away to an island with all my money,
right.
But I had to put a full stop on that as my identity.
Did you miss the adrenaline?
I miss it all the time. I miss it all the time. I do.
It seems like you get some high pressure situations in this new job, though.
I do, and those do turn me on. Those do. When I have a win, when we move the BMI thing here, or I set up a successful interaction that really nets something big, and I put a lot of work into it. Yeah, I get a charge out of that. Nothing will replace playing music I helped create in front of thousands of people.
Yeah,
that's irreplaceable.
Right.
There is a tremendous amount of parallel between, say, what I did and someone who plays professional athletics, because I played violin from when I was 3 until 2010, and that became something I did as a kid, which was part of my identity too,
right.
To 2010, which I did for 15 years as my sole source of revenue.
Right.
As a living.
And identity.
And tremendous amount of identity with that, even before social media came along and you sort of brand yourself in a way. Mm-hmm. And so stepping away from that and kind of going into the shadows of that to go start something completely different without allowing myself to go back for a couple of years and put my toe back in, because that's like a La Brea tar pit. You walk back and you put your toe in, and all of a sudden 6 months go by and you're like, what am I doing on this bus again?
Yeah.
I really had to put full stop, but there's a lot of parallel between the guys I knew that I met on the road who were playing ball, baseball, football, pro golf, whatever else. They had this childhood identity that went along with that They had this young adult identity that went along with that, and all the lifestyle that came with that. The new interactions with new people in every city, every day.
Yeah.
New, exciting. And to turn that valve off one day was really difficult. And I still think I deal with that. I didn't deal with it that great for a few years.
We've had to all deal with it this last year. When they cut touring off.
That's what worried me the most.
Cold turkey.
About dealing with my friends like you and others who took a hard stop that they were not expecting.
Yeah, it's been tough.
Because mentally, psychologically, it's not healthy to do that. And yeah, it broke my heart for a lot of people to see how they dealt with it. It wasn't all positive, No,
it's not. It's been a long year.
Yeah. So at least the advantage I had in 2010 was I'm choosing to do this.
Right.
It is my choice. I understand that. I've had the time of my life. I'll always reflect on it. And now, with a lot of separation from it, I can go back and pick out all the positive parts, and it's the best.
Yeah, and you
thing I
still
ever
get
did.
to interact with all the same type of people that you were in love with in the first place.
That's been a blessing that came along with working at TMO or Texas Music Office, is that I got to go back and interact with people and see them, be around it a lot, and know that I was
I've
supporting
seen you
it.
a lot more.
Yeah.
Since you started working there.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say. I have to give Pat. At the time, it was unexpected. But looking back, I have to give Pat a ton of respect for this, and share, with you and anyone who asks how grateful I am that he took this attitude with me, that when I left, it was like, for me and Pat, it was like a marriage breaking up and all that goes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, that spot's yours. You come back whenever you want. You don't even have to call me. Just you show up and play whenever you want. And you kind of wrestle with that, and you're like, is he serious? Is he saying this in the moment? Because it's Pat.
Right.
And
And 6 months later when you're gone.
Yeah, and you call him back, and he's
what?
like, "Where's my number?"
We've
dude?"
moved on.
Exactly.
Even if the position doesn't get filled,
Yeah, I don't want you around
bring
anymore.
someone around.
I've thought about it, and I don't want you around anymore. It could have gone either way. I think about this a lot. You've got. I'll try to make this a brief example, but in college, you got a whole semester, right? And you start at the beginning of the semester, and everyone's got an A.
Yeah.
Right. And you test and you test and you test, and you'd like to keep that A at the end of that semester. Right. So, the way I looked at relationships at the beginning of the semester with Pat, was not the adult way to look at it. At the end of the semester, where I think we approached a couple of years ago, where Pat and I are at the place we are now, where we're family, I had to make 110s on all my tests personally in every interaction with him to make me feel like I was passing that class.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was trying to make up for a deficit I'd put myself in, because I was so personally wrapped up and emotionally wrapped up in this band and all that we had going on.
Yeah.
But, I think we made it to that point, and it had everything to do with Pat leaving the door open. And
Yeah.
so when you ask, like, how many shows do I get? Any shows I want. And it typically adds up to about 10 or 15 shows a year.
That must be fun.
Well, that lets me go back and know a couple of things. I loved that. I was right to love it my whole life, and to want to do it, and to aspire to do it, and to do it the best I could. I'm not the greatest fiddle player in the world or musician in the world, but I got to be in a really featured spot in a really popular band for a long time. And that was a huge blessing that I'll always be grateful for. But now I get to go back and just be that guy for a minute.
Yeah.
And then step away.
I love it for you that you get to do that, and that you get to see, you get to take apart all the frustrating parts about being in that band for the 10, 15
put them away
and go, okay, that was frustrating. I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
Because I remember
I
would call you out a couple times. Like,
Yeah.
hey, dude, you just don't look happy.
Right.
And so you couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I was so blinded by exactly what I thought, and I was in my head every minute of every day. It's just not a healthy way to live,
Yeah.
And getting to put that aside makes me a healthier and more well-adjusted person, sure. But I also knew in myself that if I didn't continue a relationship with Pat, and I'll speak specifically to Pat, that I would have done myself a disservice. You know, he can feel however he wants about all that. But I knew for me that repairing all that and becoming this person that can go give him a hug, play a great show, and be a part of his life in that way.
Right.
Whatever that means to him, I'm doing myself, a solid.
That was like a divorce with you and Pat.
Yeah, I think any time you spend that much time with those people and that charged of a place,
And especially at the level y'all were doing it. I mean, y'all were playing big shows all year long.
yeah, and then I bear a significant amount of that, sort of emotional weight because, I carried it that way, and so leaving all that behind, yeah, it was essentially like a breakup, but it's a friendship and a family dynamic that I can repair, and I'm big enough to do that. I know that now. So, going back and playing those shows, you don't see me not smiling, and you don't see me not being happy to be there.
No, it's almost like a completely different personality.
Well, it's a gift he gave me to be able to do that, and it's a gift I gave myself to be adult enough and mature enough to put all of those things aside and just see it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's an amazing gift. So I love getting back to the playing. So it's the best. I hope I get to do it forever. I really do.
Well, let's hope he gets to do it forever.
Me too. I feel the same way. I genuinely feel, and I listened to your cast that you just did with him. I thought it was great. I mean, that was Pat talking on the mic. I mean, it will never be anything different,
Right.
I genuinely feel like having lived next to him for, 25 plus years now, he's had a big first act. I like his attitude about where he is, and he's due for a great second act.
Yeah.
And I wish that for him. I wish that, he's the kind of person I think he is that can take that inventory and go be that person that he can be for the next 30 plus years in this business.
That's the thing is like, it's hard to defining what your second and third act is going to be.
Now, recognizing that you need to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I always remember thinking when we were younger and I was taking it more seriously and trying to go to Nashville and trying to, I always remember going, man, the party doesn't go on forever.
Right.
Like you gotta go make an impact now so you can have some other opportunities. Like, if you hadn't done what you did, gone all over the world with a band, had the time of your life, but
Absolutely.
then because of that, it was a springboard to.
It was. I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing without having had that experience. I mean, hands down, if I'd come out of college and taken some job, I would have been in a completely different life now.
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, obviously you'd be good at anything you do. I mean, I've seen you take on different roles and over the past 20 years, and it's pretty unmistakable.
I
talented.
I appreciate that. I love making music with people. I love playing music in front of people. I mean, these are all just bedrock things that I know to be true. There's no greater blessing to me, and still knowing those things, getting to work for it and support it every day just gives me more gratification than, the hour and a half a day I was doing it with Pat back in the day.
Right.
I'm geared for more than that.
Yeah.
And so, figuring that out and finding a lane gives me the ability, and I'm really grateful for that, to look back and say, this has all been one thing. This is not just a series of whoops, I fell into this, whoops, I fell into that things.
Right.
This has all been one thing.
Right. It seems to have
hopefully it'll
intent.
continue to be.
How long do you think you'll stay at TMO, Texas Music Office?
Well, it's really not up to me. I mean, that's a good feeling too, because, I get asked that all the time, and I think people expect me to say, well, I don't know. I mean, the governor could change, times could change. I don't think about it that way. I just don't. I don't
think of it that way. I don't mean like, it seems to me like it has more to do with how long do you want to
I said at the
push
beginning
this
of this
rock
thing,
up the hill.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, I said about 5 years ago, I'd like not to stay here past my idea dates.
Yeah.
If I found myself sitting at the office going, I've done everything I know how to do here, and 5 more years go by, and I'm not at that point yet, but if 5 more years go by and I had reached that point.
Well, you know what that does to, what being in a position where you don't feel like you're really getting to use all your talents, you went through that before.
Yeah, that's like putting myself in solitary. Like nobody likes that guy.
Yeah.
So nobody likes that guy. I wouldn't like that guy. My family wouldn't like that guy. I'm really fortunate now. Part of my mission at the office was to grow it, to really identify the things we as an office could do well, take everything else out, and just do those things well, say no to everything else, and automate it. So that when, Mark leaves as social media coordinator and outreach, and Chip decides he's moving on, someone comes in and does that thing.
Right.
And I don't have to have my hands on that to make sure the office does its work.
Right.
People can add to that. New people can add to that. That's great. I want it to do these things that I think are important as a system. And so we built that system that does its work. So now I do find myself with sort of executive downtime where I can think.
Right.
Because I'm not going all over the state selling this thing anymore. It sells itself.
Right.
And Chip, whom we hired, is going out and doing that interface work that I was doing. I can sit and think about how we're best and highest used.
Yeah.
in the
How
office.
to grow different programs, do different things.
So when you ask, like, how much longer? Well, there's an end date on it. Politics being what it is, the big guy is going to, make his moves, whatever those are. I don't know what those are. And someone else could very easily come in and say, well, I'm going to put my stamp on this the way he did. And then there's somebody else. And that's great.
That's going to happen with the program no matter what, even in the satellite cities, because there's going to be new mayors and
100%.
new administrations every couple of
There
years.
are winds that blow. I totally understand that. What I want to be ready for is an understanding of where I'm best suited. And, I genuinely believe that people will find me.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that. And I'm not impatient.
I also think
about
the
it.
way you've set it up and the way you've set yourself up in our industry is it's funny because you seem to think that who's in the Capitol, the governor's seat would make a difference, and I don't look at this as even remotely partisan.
I don't think it is, and I've never approached it that way. I've seen this as, nominally constituent service. You got to find out exactly who your constituents are and then go work for them. And that, to me, is done regardless of R's and D's. It doesn't really make a difference to me. We have to navigate laws that get made, sure, but I don't look at this as a political position. It is, but I don't see it through that lens.
It's in the political sphere, but it's not,
100%. And that
it doesn't
to
have
me,
a right or left side.
Right. That to me gives me an opportunity to learn and grow and figure out how that system works while I'm here. That's interesting.
Dude, you can put that in the present tense. It's no longer future tense. Like, just listening to you talk, and you've been done events I've been a part of, and leadership roles and things like that. Your language, you learned the language. You have learned the language, my friend. If it's like reading music, you figured it out.
Thanks. Well, I don't want to double talk. I try to say exactly what we're doing and what I mean. I think I've gotten better at that. I think delivering an idea, delivering a message, because frankly, most of the people I talk to don't want to hear me have a conversation with them. They want to hear exactly what I want, exactly what I need, exactly how they can help, meeting over.
Right.
So you don't waste time with a bunch of, well, I did this and I did that.
Right.
You just get to the point and understand and know your subject matter inside and out better than anybody else. And then you might have a shot. And so I think that'll carry on to later life. And I'm excited about whatever that is. There's a lot going on in the industry, and I know a lot about it. Mm-hmm. I don't know everything. I never will. But there's a lot going on, and I'd love to be a part of making sure things work better for people that I used to be.
Yeah.
And really love and respect. So, in that way, to some groups, I'm unicornish because I was that. I understand it inside and out. I know the lifestyle. It's not something I read in a book, but I know a lot of other things now too.
Right.
So that for somebody is going to be attractive. So, when my ideas are done and the office is running like it's supposed to, I hope someone can come in and do my job and take what we've done, my team has done really well, and expand on it. And I hope at that point that I'll be somewhere where I'm optimized and I'm going to work to do some good.
Doing something else that you're learning. And
I have to tell a story that's going to lead into something else real briefly. So when we were coming up, right, and I was getting to know this scene.
Yeah.
So the idea that you could be an independent, self-produced, self-promoted artist was kind of a foreign concept. We'd grown up, I grew up in College Station, listening to the heroes.
Right.
But on the covers of every record was the label name. And I knew that to be a thing that was done. If we were going to ever hear music that was going to be played in living rooms that I was growing up in, it was made by these kind of people.
Right.
And I could read the jackets and figure out who that was. And when you did, your take on that by self-promoting, self-producing, self-releasing, and self-touring all these incredible records you made when I was young, I'm a few years younger than you, so I got to listen to that in my sort of infant phase of the playing world. That was hugely eye-opening and affecting to so many people, a lot of whom you've talked to on the show, and you probably will end up. And Jack Pierce was a part of that too, and that they got in some major label relationships earlier, but seeing how those got done, a huge light bulb went off to me. So here's my story. So I was still in high school, hadn't started at A&M yet, and I went down to Stafford, and you were playing. Now I was in love with the idea that somehow I could play fiddle on the stage, violin fiddle on the stage with bands that I was listening to on tapes.
Yeah, man.
That's a huge leap.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, there's one thing to listen to him in your house, in your room. There's another thing to be a guy on stage.
Go interact. So
I went down super early. This is how creepy, weird kid I was. I went down there super early, and Diamond Jim was playing with you. And I believe he'd done the Live at 8 Airs thing, maybe.
That's right.
In my head, that's kind of how it worked.
Milo played steel and Jim played fiddle.
So there was a guy doing that, had a fiddle, and I went and stood right in front of him. I didn't go with anybody else. I didn't call a bunch of buddies to go. I went and stood in front of that dude, and I watched him, and he could see me watching him.
Yeah.
And essentially, at one break, he was like, "Do you play or something? What are you doing?" I was creeping him out, 100%. But y'all were killing it, and the Stafford was packed, and it's all I ever wanted to do in the world. And so I kept standing there, and he had to take a leak, right? So there's the back door at the Stafford, which leads out, like we talked about earlier, to the street. And he said, "Well, put your money where your mouth is. Get up here."
That's so good.
And so he pulled me up, and you're playing, and you looked over, it's the typical like, "What? Come on, man, it's my show. What are you doing?" And pulled me up, and you played Whiskey River in G, as the people do.
That's right.
And
People's chord.
The people, yes.
The people's
and
key.
So I just, as Johnny Gimble said, I played everything I knew. And you looked over and you're like, "Well, shit, that was pretty good."
Yeah, man.
And huge charge. So I made my way off stage. I tried not to overstay. But in the crowd was Jeremy Elliott, who had just started at A&M.
That's right.
And I went walking off in my little victory lap, and no one knew what the hell I was doing there. But he grabbed me and said, "That was really cool. So this guy is moving back to College Station. His name's Roger Clemens, and he's just looking to do open mic stuff. He doesn't have anything. You're not going to be able to find anything for him.
Right.
But you should just go meet him." And so I played with him these open mics at Third Floor Cantina a bunch and other places, and he and I could just do a show together.
Right.
His first paid show was for my dad for his birthday party. Roger's very first one. And then he did a demo, which was really rough, but it got Lloyd Maines to say yes to producing his first record called Having Fun All Wrong.
Right.
It's before I'd met Corey, before I met Pat.
Wow.
And Lloyd, he brought me to the studio, and Lloyd was like, I can't do Lloyd. Now, do you own a tuner? He was like, "Well, we can give you a shot if you want to." But I did it, and he let me play. And of course, Lloyd is the consummate, like, just play this, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Make you sound like a real fiddle player is what he said.
Yeah.
And he did, and he kept bringing me back.
He made all of us sound real at some level.
He made all of us sound real because he took time and would coach us through it, and he didn't just bring in the scabs to get the record done.
That's right.
And he was so gracious to me, and so I got some confidence from all of that, and it gave me the confidence to creepy weird kid again, to Corey Morrow at the Tap, who asked me to come play shows. And when Corey played the show with Robert Earl Keen, and it got rained out that Shayberg and Dixon did at Wolf Pen,
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to play the show. I showed backup when the reschedule happened, and Pat was opening the show because Corey was playing his sister's wedding. I kept my backstage pass, and that's where I went up to Pat and said, "I don't know you. You don't know me, but you need me in your band." And
I love it.
And he hired me, and I played the next night and played for 15 years.
For 15 years.
So I want to thank you for that, because that whole like line of people I met when I was finishing high school for like 6 months was direct result of me stage gang staging your show at Stafford.
Hey, man, you were a welcome addition. I mean, every time you've ever been on stage with me.
I appreciate it. I can't overstate the amount of impact that it had on me, and it directly led to this kind of career I had with Pat forever. And to answer your question, Matt, what happened with Pat is he had a bunch of guys from Lubbock, Terabay being one of them, but he had a bunch of older guys.
Remember, had that terrible drummer.
Great
guy.
I don't want to throw him under the bus. Hey, but he really did. But these guys kept getting fed up and would leave, right?
Oh, right.
They're like, we'd had enough. We're not getting paid anyway. I'm out. And so we just got whittled down to me and T-Bay and Pat, which you can imagine what that sounds like. And Pat at one point was like, man, I need a...
Chugga.
It's terrible. And he was essentially like, I got to find some guys. And so I hired Justin, who was my roommate, Pollard, who I had a cover band with in high school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then we hired our neighbor, Brett.
Pollard's from College Station, too?
He moved to College Station, and I met him my freshman year of high school in English class.
Wow.
And so we got him in the band. And then Brett, our next door neighbor, became the guitar player. And that was the band that did all the stuff for a long time. Yeah, that was it. But I had to share that with you because...
Thank you, man. Well,
it goes a long way.
It's funny when we think back about how we got... I mean, I was the same weird kid that would go stand in front of Jerry Jeff Walker or Robert O'Kane, just looking for... Just digging in anything.
Notice me.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you learn.
That's it. But I gotta tell you, I appreciate that. You didn't just boot me off.
Hell no. Too good looking to boot off.
Jack, I love you. I love that
man.
song we wrote too, man. That was a real COVID miracle for me to have that get created and
I'll never
recorded that
forget
way.
sitting there at that table on the phone with you.
Yeah.
I think we were FaceTiming it like...
We did the Deep Eddy regulars Zoom call, and everybody else faded off.
That's
And I was
right.
like, I'm awake. Do you want to play cards?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Good stuff.
Great talking with you, man.
Good to talk to you, Jack. Always good to see you.